In this video, we're going to be taking a look at digitizing a very simple logo here in InkStitch, but I am going to caution you. You are going to want to pay attention to this video. If you're anything like me, you're going to want to pay attention to this video because I promise you, I don't think this has ever been demonstrated in any InkStitch video out there, okay? So I may be overselling. I don't know. But I think there's some really, really interesting things that I discovered. And this is something that I've been working through for many, many days. I have watched countless hours of InkStitch tutorials by all kinds of different people and gleaned little bits and pieces from everyone. Um, and I've never really seen this demonstrated or explained the way I'm about to show you. So let me show you what we're going to do here. So what we're going to do is we're going to import some artwork for starters. Let's see, where's our artwork at? Let's see. There it is. So we'll go ahead and import it, accept the defaults. This is the artwork we're going to be working on, okay? So for simplicity's sake, we're brand new to Inkscape, right? So for simplicity's sake, let's go ahead and trace this object. So we're just going to right click and choose trace. And Inkscape does a reasonably good job, especially with a good graphic like we've got. Okay, now we can't really see anything at this point, but it did do something for us. But we're going to hold the shift key down and click on one of these colored squares, and now we've applied a stroke color. Before, we just created objects with no stroke color, okay? So you can see that's what it's created for us. Now, it didn't do a terrible job, but it also, in my opinion, didn't do a great job. So it's kind of a catch-22 there, all right? So the first thing we're going to do is let's resize the whole kit and caboodle here because I want, now we're in millimeters, so let's switch over to inches here. We're going to do 3.75 inches. And to tell you that I've digitized this particular logo 100 times probably would not be an understatement. There are some things that I ran across and I was like, darn it, why is it doing that? Um, and it's a really, really simple logo. So, but I've literally done it countless times because there were certain things happening that I didn't understand the why behind it. Now that I understand the why behind it, boom, I could digitize this probably in 5 minutes. So there's a big difference there. But let me just walk you through all the things that you're likely to encounter, and then ultimately I'm going to give you the cookie and show you how to get around those issues. Okay, so so at any rate, we've resized our design. Now let's click our paths here, and you can see our paths are in fact roughly 3 inches. Okay, that's what I want the finished design to be. So let's click on our bitmap, go to layers and objects. Now if your layers and objects is not open here, you can find that under object, layer and objects, fill and stroke, and object properties. Those are the 3 main things that we use all the time. So those probably should be open for you. So, so at any rate, you see our image here. We're going to lock our image so we can't accidentally move our artwork, okay? So now we're going to click on our path here, and we are going to go to path and break apart. Right there. Now, you see we got a million paths, and most of that is tied up in our text. Now, I am not going to digitize the text for this video because we're going to talk about a bunch of other stuff, and I just feel like that kind of deserves its own separate video, but I will digitize this text, just not in this video. So the next thing is what's all the rest of these paths? We should only have 5. So I'm assuming that there's a bunch of junk in here. So we're just going to make a selection. You can see, oh yes, look at all that junk. Let's get rid of all that, okay? And then we're going to double click on our lower path here. I tell you what, let's not do that. Let's select all paths and let's simplify them all. I think that's going to help us ultimately. Okay, so we've selected all our paths, simplified them all, and let's come in here and we need to double click in all this junk here in the middle, all these notes here in the middle. We just need to dispose of that. Okay, so now all those have one. Bye-bye. Okay, now you can see here that we have this big open spot. So I'm just going to double click to create a node, and then I'm just going to kind of connect it there. And then what we're going to do is we're going to close this. So I'm going to select both of those nodes and choose this option right here. It says join selected nodes, and now that's closed. Okay. And let's see, are there any other issues? I don't think there's any other issues at the moment I want to discuss. All right, so now we do have a little bit of a bobble right there. And what I do to fix those is just come on either side of that and add a node by double clicking and then delete the issue. And that will kind of smooth it out by default. Over here, we don't have that issue so much. So there we go. So that's pretty well taken care of now. All right, so our next thing then is we need to convert these lines to a satin. And so we're going to select all of those lines, come into fill and stroke, and on stroke style, let's change the width to 5 millimeters. Okay. Now there is a couple of things that I see right off. By adding a width, we can see that this is not closed. See that little gap there? That's going to be kind of sort of important later. So let's go ahead and just take care of that now. We're going to select, we're kind of blindly selecting, and then we're going to choose that join, and you can see that gap closed up. Okay. We're going to do the same thing up here. We're in our node tool, blindly select, join. Okay. Now, looking at these other shapes, I think we're okay. I think those are closed. Like I said, that little element will become more important here in just a little bit. All right. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and select everything, and we're going to create our first stitches. So we're going to go into extensions, InkStitch, Tool Satin, convert line to satin. And it's going to use that line width to determine how wide our satin stitches is. Okay? And we get that as an end result. So let's look at that. Let's look at what we got. So we're going to go to InkStitch, Visualize Simulator, and it's going to show us how this design is going to stitch out. Now, it's impressive. For a free program, it's impressive. I'm totally there with you. Okay? It's impressive. But you could see the end result. We have these jump stitches that are going every which way but loose, and that obviously is not the desired effect. There's something else that I failed to do, and that's my fault, is look at how it's stitching. It stitches that piece, then that piece, it jumps over to the other side of the design, jumping all over the place. Okay, so we didn't set our sequence properly. So let's back up a step, and let's select our big piece, and then this piece, and then this piece, and then this piece, and then this piece, and come up to Extensions, InkStitch, Edit, Restack objects in the order that we selected them. Okay, so now we can go in and select and recreate those stitches. So InkStitch, Tool Satin, convert line to satin. There we go. So now we've recreated the stitches again. Okay, so let's take one more look here under Simulator and just take a look at what it generated for us. The exciting part's coming up, I promise you. There's going to be good information here. Very good information. Okay, so you can see the end result that we got here, and you could probably see that we've got these crazy thread jumps that we do not want. I do not want these thread jumps there. So how are we able to take control of the thread jumps? Because that just is not working for me. I don't know what you guys think, but that's not good. That's not good. So how do we fix it? Well, fortunately, there is a function in Inkscape that will help us out a little bit. So let's select all of our satin columns that we just generated. And there's a function called extensions, InkStitch, auto rotate satin column. So it's under tools satin, auto rotate. It's auto route satin columns. Okay, and then we'll just go ahead and we'll preserve our current sequencing and hit play, and it will go ahead and do something to our file, and you will see a different, better, but different result. So let's go under visualize and see exactly what it did for us. We're not out of the woods yet, but we'll take a look at what it did for us. And you can see here that it creates our big piece at the bottom and then jumps over to our next piece, our next piece, and our next piece. But let's back up a little bit. Let's start with our first jump. So it's coming along, doing the satin, and then it's finishing the satin and jumping straight to our next object. Okay? Jumping straight to our next object. And that's exactly what we want it to do. And then it finishes that object, and then it comes up here and does our next object. You can see that there. So it's finishing this satin, boom, jumping right to the next one. Excellent. That's exactly our expectation. And then it's going to finish the next satin, and it jumps right over. Perfect. We're doing good. But this is where we lose it. We lose it right here. What's it doing? It's finishing that satin, but it's finishing the satin on the inside, jumping over those satin stitches that were just stitched to move to the next object. Well, that, folks, that's not going to sit well with me, because we don't want that thread jump to pop over there, do we? So now we got issues. Okay? So let me show you how we can fix that one little issue. How do we fix that one little issue? And then I just want to talk about something else that I discovered as well. So, and this is pretty interesting stuff, I think. So, I believe, I'm sorry, I have to go back in. I just had it in my brain and lost it. So what we have to do, I believe it's the top satin. So yes, it is the top satin. Now that, see, I just had to think about it for a second, but let me show you what I'm talking about here. So the top satin, see that? The top satin's finishing and then it's jumping. So what we need to do, and you see it's finishing on the inside, jumping over. What we need to do is we need to flip-flop that. We need the satin to finish on the outside and then jump. Okay? So that's step number one. So let me show you how to do that. So we'll close out of that. And like I said, I did some crazy nights figuring this out. So I'm just going to duplicate this existing object to illustrate my point, and I'll show you what we're going to do. Okay. So the first thing is we have this. We're going to go to path, and we're going to break apart, and then I want to show you something. So let's delete all of those, and let's delete all of those for this example. Okay, so we have two paths here. Okay. And this is what we're going to do. We're going to take the top path and we're going to duplicate it. We're going to take the bottom path and we're going to duplicate it. And what I'm doing is I'm hitting Control D to duplicate. And then I'm going to take those two duplicates that are just sitting right on top of the originals and move it down. Okay? And then I'm going to do the opposite of what I just did. We're going to take the bottom path and we're going to duplicate it. we're going to take the top path and we're going to duplicate it. And you'll be like, well, good Lord, why are you doing all that? Well, trust me, it's all going to make sense here momentarily. So we're going to move this down. Okay. Now we're going to take these two paths and we're going to combine them. Control K. And we're going to take these two paths and we're going to combine those. Control K. Now keep in mind that the top one, we duplicated the top line first, and then we duplicated the inside, and then we duplicated the bottom line, and then duplicated the top, right? So this is very, very important. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to go up here to extensions, InkStitch, and we're going to go to params, and we're going to set those both as satin columns. And then we're going to look at the result that we get, and this is a very interesting situation. So you can see what it's doing. It's coming over. Boop. And I want you to notice this. This is what's so key and so interesting is you notice that at the top when it's stitched, let me back up maybe just so you could see that a little bit. You see where it's stitched? Where did it stop the satin? It stopped the satin on the outside. But on the bottom, it stopped the satin where? It stopped the satin on the inside. Isn't that interesting? So what that means for us is whatever the first object is, that whatever the first path is, that is what is going to be the what I would call the anchor. So because on the top scenario, we duplicated the top before we created the second path, that became the anchor, so that's where it ended. On the bottom, we duplicated the bottom path, then duplicated the top, and so that became the anchor, right? That's where it stops, is on the inside. Okay, so in our example, so let's go ahead and just close this out. So now we understand how it works and why it works the way it does. What we have to do is we have our path here that is currently ending the satin on the inside, jumping over. So now we have to give it a little bit more instruction and say no, no, no. We want the reverse of that. So all we have to do is come in here and we'll break apart this path. Okay. Now, technically speaking, we don't need all of this business. And I think, is that one? Yeah. So we go ahead and delete all that. So we don't need those. But so what we're going to do is we're going to duplicate. So let's go back over here to layers and objects. I'm going to give this path a special name. And I'm doing this mainly for you. Okay? This will just help us differentiate. See? So I know that HHH and GGG are existing paths. Now remember we were talking about the anchor. So we're going to duplicate the top path first. Then we're going to duplicate the bottom path. Okay? And so the original we just want to discard because we don't need those. And so now we are going to take these and we're going to combine them together, and we have to have this stitch out next, basically. So so that is right after let's see here. Yes. So this is right after Auto Satin 15. We want this. So right there. Okay. And let's go ahead and apply stitches to that. So under params, we are going to satin column, custom satin column. There we go. And now what we should see is we should see our satin column end on the left-hand side. And sure enough, look at there. See that little tiny point? So that's ending on the left-hand side where previously it was ending on the right-hand side. So that's excellent. Apply and quit. Now that's going to give us the results that we ultimately want to a certain degree. I say to a certain degree. No, this is very usable results. So let's go to simulate. I do want to show you one other thing just because I'm that way. So you could see everything is looking just fine, and sure enough, you see that jump happening from the outside now to our next. So now we can clip, 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 clip. Super simple, no problem clipping those jump stitches, and everything is going to work like we expect. Whew. I'm glad we got through all that. So that is how to really take control of those thread jumps and little tiny tweaks here and there, and just understanding how the software works. Then we can kind of force it to do the things that we really want it to do. Now, we're not done. Okay, we're not done. We're not done. You want extra credit? Let's back up. Let's see. I don't know how far I can back up. Let's see how far I can back up here. If I can back up the whole way, I will back up the whole way. Because I don't really want to have to redo everything, but I will if I have to. All right, so let me just share with you one other thing that I think is super important that I did learn. But I want to make sure. Okay. All right. So one other thing that I thought was interesting that I learned in my quest to take control of thread trims. One other thing that I learned that we can kind of control our thread trims even a little bit more. So here's how we do it. So let's say, for example, I want my thread jump to be right here. I've just decided that's where I want my thread jump to be. I've created a node by double clicking on the path, and then we're going to choose this option to break path at selected node. Okay. And then I'm going to come over here to my next object, and this is where my connector is going to be. So again, I double clicked to create a node, and we're going to choose break path at node. And then I'm going to come up here, and I want that to be right there. So we'll go ahead and add a node, and we'll break it. And then we're going to come over here to our next object, and we're going to add a node, and we're going to break it. And then right over here, we'll come over here, and we'll add a node and break it. And we're going to go directly across from that. We already have a node. Beautiful. We'll break it. And then this is where you'll notice the change most. Because remember, it was kind of coming up here. But no, we're gonna come right here, and we're gonna break it, and we're gonna connect it right there. Break it. Okay. So if you want to take a little bit more control over exactly where your thread jumps are going to happen, that's how you do it. Okay. So now if we come in here and convert this to stitches, we'll come down here to InkStitch, Tool Satin, convert line to satin. It's going to convert. Beautiful. It did all our conversions. And then we're going to go ahead and select the extensions, InkStitch, and we're going to go to Tool Satin, Auto Route Satin Columns. We'll go ahead and hit Apply. And we'll close, and let's look at the simulation, make sure we don't have a little bit more adjusting to do. We might, because of the inside-outside thing. That's the only thing that should be left is determining inside-outside. But the main thing that I want to look at is where we broke our path, does it in fact end there? And it does not look like it does. You see that right there? It's ending, I think we broke it here, and it's connecting there. So that's kind of strange. And see, we broke it here, and it's connecting up there. Not that that's a huge deal, but it is to me a little bit odd. And oh, I don't know. I see we have some other issues. Let's back up. I must have backed up too far. Let's back up a second. So let's come in here and let's set our sequencing, because apparently that's off. I'm not sure how it got off, but it did get off. So we'll reset our sequencing. And now now it's got me puzzled as to why it's doing what it's doing. Because I would not expect this. I'm going to delete this node. I would not really expect it to do what it's doing there, because it was that node that was there. That's where it was doing the thread jump, and I don't know about that one. I don't know, but you can see these nodes are a little bit different, and that's because we broke it apart. So I don't know if changing that node right there is going to really have the desired effect, but let's just find out. So now let's go ahead and go back and convert to tool satin, convert line to satin. And then, yes, we'll select everything and we'll go ahead and do the auto route again. Tool satin, auto route, and apply. And we'll take a look at it. And then I'm going to show you even more. Because I really think it's important that that we really get this down. Because if you really want to create really good embroidery designs and really control those thread jumps, there's some things that we can do, and I'll show you here momentarily, that I think may be of interest. So, so it's interesting that where we broke it, that's where it's starting. So I find that interesting. But when we come around and look at there, that is interesting. Where we stopped, or we took that one node out, and now you could see that result there. So now it is jumping exactly how we expected. Now, we don't like this, obviously, that little gap there. We definitely don't like that, which we'll fix that. But it's finishing the satin on the inside. No, see that? So it's finishing the satin on the inside and jumping over to the next object. So that we have to fix for sure. Finishing the satin on the inside. Why? Why would you do that to us? Okay, so it's finishing the satin on the inside. No. And then over here, inside. Oh my goodness, it's finishing the satin on the inside. I don't like that. So it's finishing the satin on the inside in all instances. But where we broke it, on all those objects, where we broke it, it minded its business, and that is where the thread jump is happening. And I think that, to me, adds value, because that's exactly what we wanted to do. So let's go in, we'll fix that, we'll deal with this, and we'll deal with those, and I think, you know, it's going to be fairly straightforward. And you can see here what's happening here. This is kind of a weird little deal here. It's not, so I think if we just literally do that and that, and let's look at it here just a little bit. So it's coming over just a little bit. So you see, we didn't hardly move it, hardly anything, right? So let's just double check it and make sure that that did in fact fix the issue. But I'm pretty confident that that is going to fix our issue. And let's fast forward. And you can see that's definitely better than it was. Definitely better than it was. Now, did it totally fix it? Not to my liking. So we're going to do a small edit. Show you what we're going to do here. So not super excited. So we'll do a small edit here. Bring this around a little bit. If we click on that node, tell you what, let's see let's see what that does. So I'm a little bit happier with that. So we get these little control nodes, and I think I'll be a little bit happier there. And I'm just going to kind of draw an imaginary angle. So this node, you see where it's ending up here. So we're going to kind of draw an imaginary line, if you will. And so it's kind of right across from it. And we have these existing rails, I guess you would call them. And so I'm just going to, rather than add a rail, this is something that's kind of interesting, is the software will look at the rails and it looks at nodes. So we shouldn't have to add a rail here. But if I add a node and add a node, that should also be kind of an instruction to turn those stitches. Okay, so let's see what the result is now. So let's go to InkStitch, visualize, simulate. So yes, sometimes it's easy. It's easy to add the rails or the rungs, I mean. But let's see how it finishes this off. Okay, so that's what I want. That's what I want you to look at. Now, this overlap is kind of extreme, so I might edit that further. But look, notice that the stitches are going this direction, and then they are turning around and leveling off because we added those two little nodes at the very end to say, hey, I want the stitches to go this way. So I probably would back off my overhang a little bit there. But that is, pretty common issue that we're going to have. So we can back this off. We can just delete this one node there. We'll delete this node here. And these ending nodes will also specify, so it uses these ending nodes as a instruction as well for changing stitch angles. So I will go ahead and add one right there. We'll just do that. And we'll just see now what the result is. So InkStitch, visualize, simulator. I just think this is super important. You're just, if you're just learning InkStitch, having this kind of deep dive into how the software thinks will help you create better designs. And you can see, there we go. Now we've got the overhang more or less the way we want it. Everything is looking good, except for the fact that our jump stitches are all coming from the inside. This one, maybe not. It's hard to say. I think it's coming from the inside, though. And this next one definitely is coming from the inside. And the next one is definitely coming from the inside. So let's just assume that they all, in fact, are coming from the inside. So what do we have to do? Well, we kind of already know, right? To help us just real quickly kind of differentiate between the various objects, I'm going to just recolor this. I just think sometimes that is helpful. So we're going to select this, and we're going to choose path, and we're going to choose break apart, and we can eliminate all the pieces except our 2 rails. You know, it kind of stinks that we have to do this, but we don't really have a choice either. So we want it to end on the outside, so we need to duplicate the outside line, and we need to duplicate the inside line, Control D, and we need to select both of those items, right? We need to combine them, and then we need that to be moved after this. So we have that, and then we're going to have this, that, then this, right? I hope I did that right. I'm pretty sure I did. So this is auto satin running stitch 5, so then this would go there. And then let's just hide what we just created for a second. And then now these should be individual pieces, and they are, so we can delete that and delete that. And then we'll turn that back on, okay? Now, this is a path, but it's not been changed into stitches. So let's go ahead and do that. InkStitch params. We will turn this into a satin column. And it should stitch out pretty good, and the reason it's going to stitch out pretty good in terms of my stitch angles is because we'll look at the path and you'll see that there's a lot of nodes all along the path. So we already have a lot of instruction on what angles those stitches are supposed to be. Now, I did something I shouldn't have done because I wanted to see where it ends. My bad. So I just wanted to see if it ends up top. So we'll look at it again. It'll show us. We can fast forward through this. Where does it end? It ends up top where we want it to. Perfect. Okay. So the effort that we put in was worth it. I just want to show you that path and what I was talking about. See why we have our stitches are so defined is because we have all these crazy nodes along there. Now, we can delete that or leave it the way it is. I'm just going to leave it the way it is. You could simplify the path, but to me, it's not that big a deal. So this was the last section that stitches in our simulator. So this is what we have to break apart. But again, I'm just going to give it a color just so we can help differentiate it just a little bit. So, so at any rate, we're going to go to path and we're going to break it apart. We do not need any of these elements. So we do not need any of that stuff. So we'll just hit the delete key here. It's not deleting for some reason. There we go. I guess you have to be in your pick tool to delete stuff. I was in my node tool. Devil's in the details. So remember, we want to the satin to end on the outside, so duplicate the outside, duplicate the inside. Go ahead and combine those two paths. This guy here is 10, auto stitch 10. So we're going to come down and put it right there in front of auto stitch 10. And then that should be the two other pieces that we need to discard. Okay, oops, I don't know what I did there. So that was auto stitch 10. What did I do there? What's this one? What's this one? So, okay, we need to delete these two then. There we go. So our new created path, we're going to come in here to extensions, InkStitch params, and we're going to give it a satin, create custom satin. Double check that it ends on the outside. Bingo bungo, it does. Beautiful. And then so we have our last one here. It is ending right there. So again, we will give it a color just to help us differentiate it. We will go up to path and break it out apart. We will get rid of all this muckety muck that we don't need. And then we will go ahead and remember we have to duplicate our outside, duplicate our inside. We'll combine both of those parts. And this, let's see here, what is going to stitch out? Okay, so then in this case, this is going to stitch auto stitch 13. So we need this to come down to auto stitch 13 right afterwards. And that means path 137 has to go and auto satin 9 has to go. And that leaves us with our newly created path, which we will then apply the stitches. Satin column, custom satin column, we might as well just verify that in fact it is going to end on the left hand side, on the outside. And you can see that is in fact where it ends. So beautiful. And again, we don't have to worry about stitch angles because we have 400,000 nodes that tells it exactly what direction those stitches should be going. Okay, so we got through it all, guys. We got through it all. I know it was laborious, but it really had to be done. So now let's go to InkStitch, visualize, and come down to the simulator realistic preview, and we'll see what we got. To do this logo, like all those steps I just showed you, if I was just doing it, it's probably a 20-minute job. It's not a big deal. We really drug it out because I had to explain what's going wrong, explain how to fix it, right? So here we can clearly see that the satin ends on the outside and then jumps. You see that? Satin ends on the outside, boom, jumps right there. Satin ends on the outside, boom, jumps to the next object. Exactly what we want it to do, and all that looks good. Now we can be very pleased, get this stitched out, and we have absolutely no issues whatsoever. So that's good. I mean, that's a very positive thing that we figured all that out. So let's go ahead and close this out because we're not quite done with the design. Promised you the middle. So let me show you what we're going to do here. So we're going to go to our pen tool and we're going to, let me zoom in a little bit tighter here. We're going to create half of this and then flip it over and create the other half, okay? So we're going to click here, and I just like to do, when I'm using the pen tool, I just like to use straight lines. Let me go to fill and stroke here, and let's get a more reasonable stroke. 1. We're going to use 1 for right now. We are going, oh, I'll tell you what, I changed my mind. Let's use 2. 2 is the finish size that we're going to use, so we'll go ahead and use 2. Okay, and then come up here and here. Okay, that's how I like to do it. I like to create these straight line segments, switch over to my node tool here, and then just kind of pull these where they have to go. Click here, pull that one where that has to go. To me, especially for somebody brand new starting out, to me that's just an easier way to do it. You'll feel like you have more control, and that's pretty basic stuff right there. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I want to take these 3 elements, duplicate them, Control D, and then we're going to mirror them to the other side. Okay, just like so. Okay, so then what I want to do is, now these are lines. So if I, just to illustrate the point, we go back to outline here. These are lines. Okay, so we'll go back to view, normal. So what we want to do is we want to combine some lines. So for example, this one right here and this one right here, we're going to combine. So we know that's Control K. And remember earlier we went and grabbed our node tool, and we're going to select right here and choose that combine option. Join the two nodes, and then that creates one piece. Now the top, I'm not going to combine those two. We're going to stitch one, come back and stitch the other. Okay. Now there is one other thing that we do need to do, is we're going to convert all of this to satin first of all. So let's see, we have this piece, and then we have this piece, then we have this piece, and this piece. So we have all these pieces up top here. Okay, I want those to actually stitch first. So we're going to go down here to the bottom, and those are going to stitch first. Now I think I will go ahead and use the little extension to tell it which piece to stitch when. So for example, we'll switch to our pick tool here. Hold the shift key down. I want this piece to stitch, then I want this piece to stitch, then I want the middle to stitch, then I want the left side to stitch, then I want the right side to stitch. Okay, that's how I would like it to work. So now that I've done that, I can come up here to extensions, InkStitch, edit, and restack those objects to be in the order that I asked them to be in. Okay, and if we look here, if I click on this one, you can see it is in fact the bottommost. The next one is the one up from that. This is the one up from that, the one up from that, and the one up from that. So now those are all in the proper order, but we need to convert all of those to satin. So we'll come down Tool Satin and convert line to satin. Okay, so now all that's been converted. Now there still is a small issue in that I'm going to select very carefully this little run stitch. We're going to get rid of that, I believe. Yes, we're going to get rid of that. I don't know if I should have done that, but that is in fact what I did. So let me see where this ends. There it ends, right there. So all of these pieces, which if I give it a different color, I sometimes will do that. And you could see I have something something selected I shouldn't. So I could just come in here and unselect that and now give it a different color again. And now I know that, yep, I have just the pieces I want. So all of this stuff here at the bottom. And then I'm going to come in here and choose the auto route satin on all that stuff. And so it's going to go ahead and figure out how it can stitch all of these things correctly. Now, let's see here. Did I hit apply? I can't remember if I hit apply. I don't think I did. Okay, so now I've applied it, but I didn't really see anything happen. So let me just back up. Let's close this. Back up. Back up. And what I'm backing up to is that line that I accidentally deleted because I thought, do I need that? Do I not? I wasn't real sure. So basically what I'm getting from this is that it's able to stitch this out just the way it is without worrying about thread jumps and trims and stuff. But there is one issue that I am aware of. So that is not taken care of when we talk about auto routing. And that's this issue right here. So the issue between this path and this path, we need something to connect those two. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to our pen tool and we're going to just click and create us a little run stitch from one to the other. Okay, now we do need to move that run stitch down, and to let the software know it's a run stitch, we have to change to dashes. Okay, we have to change it to that, and now the software will recognize that that is a running stitch between those two objects, but it needs to be the same color. So we have to shift click and make it red. So everything is red. Okay, so now what we should get is our finished design, less the text. So let's take a look. All that work, see if it paid off. Okay, so we'll see it starting here, starting with that object, and notice that nice little run stitch running over. You can see what it did there. So now this is not expected. That is not expected. We've got a couple of things happening here that I noticed right off. Notice how that is running in a way that I don't like because of that jump stitch. So that's not good. And then we have another jump stitch that does get covered up, but that's not how I would want it to run. And now you can see that we do have craziness going on. Craziness we don't like. Okay, so that's interesting. So now what we need to do is kind of go back to the drawing board to a certain extent and select all those elements again. So let's see here. We've got this path and this path. So we need to do that auto route function. It will fix it, but we have to do it to everything. So I've selected everything, and then let's go and let's. I didn't see anything happen the first time we tried this, but maybe something did happen and I just didn't see it. I mean, it's possible. Okay. So now let's go ahead and see if enough changed to fix those issues that we were just having. I do see that. I do see it now. Something happened there. But there's something. Let me close that out. And I guess because I had something selected. Maybe that was the issue. Boy, I hope so. Something seemed off almost immediately. But we'll see. Maybe because I had something selected I should have had selected. Maybe that was the issue. Okay, so it's starting. And then it's finishing. So it's now it's not stitching in the order we want it to stitch, that's for sure. What in the world did we do here? So that and this and this. All right, let's just go down and look and see. It's doing something crazy now. I don't know how all that stuff got moved up, but it did. So we don't want that. So let's move it all down. And let's try this again. Maybe the auto route, now that I think about it, because we applied the auto route, when we did that, it moved all the objects up. Because in the process of doing that, it kind of duplicates what we already have, and then it almost creates new new objects, and new objects are added to the top. That's the only thing I could think of. I don't know. But at any rate, easy fix. Now I think we got it. Now I'm pretty confident we got it. So there we go, starting with that doing the run stitch over. Yes, much better. There is a little bit of a jump stitch between that object that finished and the next object. Because the satin stitch covers it, I don't think it's a huge deal. But just like we did here, where we created that run stitch, if we didn't want that jump, we could create a small little run stitch to connect those two. It's an option. But you can see there, it's ending on the outside. And yes, it's ending on the outside. Beautiful. Ending on the outside. Ending on the outside. And there is our finished design. Now, if there is something that I would change ever so slightly, it might be that I extend this right here over a little bit, because see, it looks like it's not quite going to get covered up by our satin, but that's an easy fix. So let's just come in here and do that real quick. So all we have to do is extend these lines over like so, past the rail. And we don't even have to bring this one that far over, but we could bring this one that far over. And then we'll do the same thing over here. We'll extend that past the rail. Good bit. That's kind of like almost like you're adding pole compensation. But the rest of it I was fairly satisfied with. But that might be one little thing to change. But you'll see here the preview how that differed just ever so slightly. It's not by much. But I better not have something selected. Can't have nothing selected when you're doing the preview for the whole design. My bad. So visualize simulator. And then we will fast forward through this bad boy. And you can see how that satin stitch is definitely gonna catch it, cover it up. Nice. So no issues there. So that is gonna be what I call the finished product. Okay, so I hope it paid off for you and gave you a better understanding of how the software works, how we can go in and really take control of these thread trims and what to do when it has goofy results. This is just one example, though. I will caution you there, because other logos that I've done that have a little bit more complex shapes threw me some other curveballs that were easily fixed now that I understand exactly how the software is going to interpret our shapes. When it does something goofy, it's an easy fix to back out of it. I do see one other thing here. Now that I look at it right up top there, I might add a little bit extra compensation and pull those rails up just a little bit for our top. You'll see it's ending. These rails are ending just short. These rails are ending just short. So I could just pull that up. This object here on the right stitches before the one on the left. So that's I'll just fix the one because the other one's going to get covered up anyhow. So now when we look at the simulation, we should see that that's nice and covered up just by extending those rails a little bit. So we'll fast forward, and now you can see that'll be capped nicely. So there we go. That's it. I hope you enjoyed this one. I hope you learned something, and now you'll be able to take control of all your thread trims and thread jumps.